You've Googled yourself at some point or another. Admit it. There's nothing shameful about it. It's not worse than what I did. I searched my name on the dark web. Don't ever make that mistake. I was 19 years old then. Liv, my girlfriend, and her family were kind enough to let me live in their guest bedroom at the start of the year. They liked the fact that I could fix most of their computer problems. Liv is a great person, and what she saw in a hacker who could never survive for long in a 9-to-5 world is beyond me. Their house was in the suburbs, only a few blocks away from the library and coffee shops with free Wi-Fi. These locations were convenient for my burgeoning career as a digital outlaw. I used these resources until I was able to move out and get a small apartment of my own. After a string of demanding jobs and abusive bosses, I found financial independence. I did this after I learned how to buy and sell things I shouldn't have with the use of Tor browser. I engaged in illegal transactions such as ordering counterfeit money and stolen IDs. I discovered that there's a large market for manufactured psychedelics. I often went to the skate park to sell those items off the neithermost landscape of the World Wide Web. Business was good. A young man with years spent in the foster care, I sought out activities which gave me the sense of control. A childhood of not having any will do that to you. The ability to navigate the online world to get almost whatever I wanted afforded me a sense of power. It was all going well until one evening in July. I sat in the second level of a Barnes & Noble bookstore in the corner next to the self-help section. I always did my best work there. This place was starting to go under, and I did not have to worry about the influx of patrons. Despite having a disguised IP address, I never wanted to risk a raid at home. The items were always shipped to a P.O. box instead of my unit number as well. In retrospect, these were all flimsy safety measures. They still gave me a sense of comfort, even if they were a tad delusional. I made sure there were no cameras mounted where I sat. It was a small place out of the way of the general public. Hiding in plain sight was always my preferred method. I drank strong coffee out of an oversized styrofoam cup. After 15 minutes of searching, I grew bored. I typed in my name, Joshua Wells. An input of my identity on that part of the web should be an indicator of how successful and arrogant I had become. I did not expect Wikipedia to be among the results, but it was. The third link down. The first one involved a ghost tour in New Jersey. The guide had a similar name. The second one was a gore website I was not interested in. While I may have been a thrill seeker, I was not out to consume media which capitalized on hurting others. I clicked on the third article link because of the title. It was about a television show. It read, The Short Life of Joshua Wells. At first, the title didn't startle me, since there are plenty of other people with that same name. Recaps of 10 episodes were on the page. The first paragraph illustrated that the series did not continue past one season. I read the summary of the first episode for the sake of passing time. Episode 1. Joshua's father is a known and feared gang member. His mother is a helpless addict. She attempts to use her own son as a drug mule on a plane flight from Boston to California. She has hopes of making a profit by dealing narcotics to a major criminal enterprise on landing. The authorities intercept them. Their son goes to CPS. He goes to a safe harbor for kids. The synopsis struck me as very close to home. Who wrote it or directed the show was not listed, but it did state an air date. The month and year matched the era which an identical set of circumstances had befallen me. The name of the center I went to was even called Safe Harbor. I was too young to remember much, but the facts were precise. I gulped and tried to shrug it off as an unusual coincidence. I read the second story summary. Episode 2. We follow Joshua on his 15th birthday. He goes to a juvenile detention facility for the first time after he attacks his teacher by throwing a desk at him. Although he missed, the instructor still presses charges since he didn't like that student much. He befriends a troublemaker on the inside named Ian. They escape, but not before a massive brawl with the other teens ensue inside of the facility. It ends with the two captured. I felt the hairs on my arm stand up. It was uncanny on how similar these events were to my own experiences. A slight dizziness overtook me, but I went on to the third, unable to keep my eyes from skimming. Episode 3. Joshua is free. Joshua decides to break and enter an old man's upper-class home after scouting the place out for days. His goal is to take as many Rolex watches from the top drawer of the old man's dresser. When he enters the house, Joshua discovers how the owner did not take his vacation cruise trip as planned. The man was asleep in his bedroom until Joshua wakes the victim by accident. Joshua runs away. He gets chased by the homeowner outside, where the elderly man dies from a heart attack in the street. I felt my chest tighten. It was all true, but I've never shared that story with anyone before. It was one of my most guilt-ridden memories. I read the next two. Episode 4. Joshua has nightmares of the old man crawling out of the ditch and choking him to death. He complains about the night terrors to one of his counselors, who recommended a doctor. He ends up selling anti-anxiety pills after he doesn't like the way it makes him feel. A girl he asked out overdoses and goes to the hospital. While she survives, he feels terrible, but not enough to stop dealing. He takes his earnings and buys a PC. He takes lessons on how to breach other people's privacy from a group of credit card thieves he met in the mall. Episode 5. Joshua discovers the dark web. He uses it to hustle low-level street drugs at first. He later reads headlines about some of his accomplices getting arrested. He still continues to engage in illicit activity. I look at the air date for episode 6. It was a 24-hour period I was living through. Episode 6. Joshua goes into a bookstore to poach their internet and try and make some money. He doesn't realize there's a man with a shaved head and a Carhartt t-shirt below him, perusing the sci-fi aisle. That stranger is actually an undercover FBI agent. The government worker has a microphone and a camera attached beneath his shirt. He is surveying for the perpetrator, even though he has not singled out who he is looking for yet. An arrest commences where they tackle, punch, and taser Joshua. They place him in handcuffs. My hands shook. I stood, gripped an Eckhart Tolle volume to appear less suspicious, and opened it. I leaned my head over the railing to stare at the ground floor below me. A man who matched the description given by the article was there. His shirt was baggy and hid what I knew to be a gun at his hip. He held a paperback in his hands. I pulled out my phone. I pretended to have a conversation with an imaginary business associate about stocks. I folded the laptop with my free hand and went down the escalator. I strolled to the back where there were stacks of hardcover tomes on history. I found an unsecured door and walked through it. I was in the warehouse. Unopened boxes were stacked all around. I did not spot any workers and made a run for the rear entrance. I sprinted down the wide alleyway between the building and rows of motels. I passed an art gallery and liquor store before my heartbeat slowed. Along the way, I found this closed vegan restaurant. The place was black on the inside, but the neon sign still glowed. A picnic table sat on the lawn out front. I stationed myself there. I opened my laptop again and connected to the free Wi-Fi without issue. I scanned the rest. The remaining episodes were all future time periods. I wiped the perspiration away from my forehead as I read the rundown of the next episode. Episode 7. Labeled a dark net market operator in the media. 3 of the 7 charges thrown at him led to convictions. This includes conspiracy to traffic narcotics. He gets out early after he agrees to cooperate with different agencies. He becomes a consultant for cybersecurity awareness and a social engineering expert. Following a keynote speech given out of town, he comes home. His girlfriend Olivia and her family have been murdered. My eyes strained and I felt my breath grow shallower. Episode 8. Joshua navigates her house. The walls have dry blood. Every corner is vandalized. Olivia's throat is slit. Her body is over the couch in the living area. Her parents had socks stuffed in their mouths and deep stab wounds on their stomachs. Joshua calls the police. He's treated as the #1 suspect in the media for days on end. He is finally cleared, but the psychological damage is too much to bear. I ponder the words. Though I was still young, it is true that life meant everything to me. Episode 9. Joshua goes to a psychiatric ward. He stares at the padded walls as though they were going to converse with him. Detectives do visit him with the hopes of gleaning some kind of further information. They tell him they know that the aftermath of the massacre he stumbled upon was the work of an active serial killer. The murderer has remained unidentified. Episode 10. Joshua leaps out of the window. He breaks his ankle. An adrenaline dump allows him to move across the field onto the nearest highway. He goes out into traffic. A long-haul truck caroms around him and takes out a line of vehicles. He goes to the nearest lake, where he weighs his own pockets down with stones. He waits until nightfall and walks out into the abyss. The last image we see is his hand breaking the surface of the water. Starlight glints on the skin before his fingers submerge below the surface. His last few swallows of water creates pockets of bubbles, which rise to the top. I absorb what the rest of my existence would look like. 4 black SUVs pull up and circle around me in the parking lot. Men in black suits and the undercover agent from the bookstore. They run right at me. Even though I do not resist, they still throw me on the ground. They dislocate my shoulder and kick me in the jaw a handful of times before they cuffed me. I did get time reduced in prison after I agreed to cooperate to catch people like me. After my release date, I have tried to revisit the link without luck. I fail to understand how the article existed in the first place. I have read how high-level stress can open the insights and portals into the unknown. I would bank on the latter, though sometimes I think it isn't for me to know. I do not want to give in to what the destiny has written for me. My escape from the bookstore has given me the confidence that I can change the outcome of the dark web prophecy, even if only for a little while. Or did I only extend the inevitable for a fraction of time? Fate, especially in regards to our stories as individuals, is not written in stone. It is malleable, I tell myself. This positive thought is the only thing which keeps me going. I should visit Liv's house now. She has not answered my text all morning. A few months ago, my best friend Jeremy called and asked if I could come over. He told me about this crazy new side of the internet that he had found. I absolutely had no idea what he was talking about. He was always up to something mischievous though. Even as an adult, he still had the enthusiasm of a child when he became excited. Because of that, it was always hard to tell him no. I could tell that this seemed important to him, so I told him to just come over and show me what the hell he was talking about. He came over to my house later that same day. He showed up with a flash drive. He was so excited, he didn't even take his shoes off. He ran over to my already open laptop that was sitting on my living room table and immediately plugged the flash drive in. He had that obnoxious smile across his face. It was that same smile he made when we were kids, the same taunting grin he made right before we were about to do something our parents would be furious about. So much for saying hello. You should really knock first. What if I was naked? My voice was playful. Shut up and come sit down. Oh, and I'm sorry for just barging in like that, he said just as playfully. Whatever, you're definitely not sorry. I'm gonna make us some tea and I'll bring it right out. I smiled as I walked away. About 10 minutes later, I came back out with 2 mugs full of freshly brewed tea. I sat the tea down on the table in front of my couch and sat next to Jeremy. I looked over at my laptop, my eyes immediately fixated on the screen. The flash drive contained a whole different operating system. I watched my laptop boot up and start running an operating system I'd never seen before. My eyes then shot a gaze at Jeremy. What the hell is this? Is this gonna mess up my computer? You know I can't afford another one if this breaks. Most importantly, I need it for school. All my schoolwork is on there. My voice was sharp, but before I could finish talking, he cut me off. You worry too much. Just relax. I tested it out on my computer, and everything went fine. Just wait for it to boot up. We'll return to normal once I power it down and remove the flash drive. His voice had a reassuring tone. Yeah, fine. Whatever, I said reluctantly. After about 10 minutes of us just sitting there watching this foreign operating system load, it finally finished. The home screen was a solid shade of blue, and there were only two icons. One was a web browser, the other was some sort of VPN. In the corner was the search bar. I tried typing all kinds of words in it, but nothing came up. Eventually, I was done clicking around, and Jeremy just took over the controls. He opened up the web browser. It was a search engine I had never seen before. Actually, it was a search engine I had never even heard of. I watched him manically type in random numbers and letters into the search engine. Before I could even ask him what he was doing, he hit enter and a wiki page popped up. Towards the middle of the page was a list of links. They all had different names. The credit card company, Guns Are Great, and the one-stop shop were the names of some of the links. Most links had extremely illegal titles and definitely led to illegal activities. Some of them were just downright disgusting and disturbing. I'd rather not go into details about those links. Jeremy quickly identified what he was looking for. It was a link called the Gore Store. He was always into that kind of stuff. I never understood why. Gore was just really fascinating to him. I myself could not say the same. It had to have been fake anyways, right? I just wanted to get it over with, so I sat quietly and just waited for the page to load. Once the page loaded, my screen was filled with obscene images of mutilated bodies. There were videos of different people getting killed in different ways. It was insanely graphic. He showed me two 30-second clips before I had to run to the bathroom. I could hear Jeremy's laughter as I viciously gagged over my toilet. When I came out of the bathroom, the gore page was gone, and he went back to the wiki page. I watched his eyes dart around the screen. It looked like he was trying to find something in particular. Before I could even ask what he was doing, he let out a, "Aha!" What is it? I'm not sure this whole dark web thing is for me. Maybe we should just turn it off. Before I could even finish my sentence, he cut me off again. Look what I found. It's pretty cool. I think you'll actually like it. I reluctantly agreed and sat back down on the couch beside him. The computer cursor was hovered over a link simply named Eyes. I was convinced it was about to be the most nauseating thing in the world. I pictured dangling eyeballs or blood-filled eye sockets. It had to be something along those lines. He could tell I was unprepared, and he immediately clicked the button after I gave him a slight nod of approval. I was not expecting what I saw. They were eyes all right, normal eyes. It looked like a business page for selling contacts. It appeared professional, and there was nothing strange about it, except for the fact that it was a seemingly normal business page on the dark web. I had a look through their section and ended up asking Jeremy to buy me a pair. He already had the correct form of currency in some sort of account. He thought it was funny, of course, and bought them for me without a second thought. I thanked him and we talked about what they were going to look like. We were both excited. After Jeremy left that night, he took his flash drive with him. He explained that he was going away on a business trip and that he wouldn't be back for a week or two. He said he sent the package directly to my house, but to call him if there was any delivery issues. The estimated arrival date was 3 weeks from that time anyways. I figured he would be back by then. That way we could experience unboxing them and me struggling to put them in together. He did find the website and pay for them after all. 2 days later, I was surprised when I opened the front door to get the mail and saw the package at my front door. I quickly got the mail and took the package inside. I remember thinking this couldn't be the contacts, it was way too early. I grabbed the box cutter from the kitchen and started to slice open the package. There they were. The bright green contacts that had a slight blue fade were in the little box. They were beautiful. I know I told Jeremy that I would wait, but I was too excited. I took them out of the box and soaked them in the contact solution that came in the package. I looked in the mirror at my dark brown eyes while the contacts sat in the solution. I smiled at the fact that my eyes were about to be a completely different color, even if they were only temporary. I always wanted brighter eyes. I had never put in contacts before, so I expected them to be quite tricky for my first try. To my surprise, I put them both in with quite ease. It's safe to say I gave myself a pat on the back. I was thoroughly impressed. It was like I had been doing it all my life. They slid right into place and didn't budge or slide at all. After looking in the mirror for who knows how long, I decided to call Jeremy and tell him about it. He didn't answer. I figured he was probably working and that he would eventually call me back. I looked back into the mirror, stunned by my new eye color. I started taking pictures to update my social media platforms. My self-esteem skyrocketed. When I was done obsessing over my new contacts, I decided I should probably make dinner. I lived by myself and always made way too much food. I'd use the leftovers for lunch, so it never really went to waste. That night I decided to make a whole lasagna. It was one of my favorite meals, and I figured I could give some to my elderly neighbor as well. I put a pot of water on the stove to bring it to boil. As I was pulling out the noodles, something caught my eye. It was like a quick shadow flew by my peripheral vision. I stopped and looked around, but I saw nothing. I remember thinking it was strange, but not uncommon. I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks on me. I finished prepping and lined up the cooked noodles on a sheet of aluminum foil. I opened a package of raw meat to cook in an already hot pan. As I went to open the meat, I glanced over at the noodles. This time, I was looking straight at them. A wave of horror washed over my face. The noodles had turned into maggots. They were swarming all over the aluminum foil. I watched as some of them wiggled themselves off of the counter. Each time one of them hit the ground, I flinched. They were big. They were about as big as the top of my pointer finger. I grabbed the broom and the garbage can and swept them into the garbage. I took them outside to the garbage bin immediately. After that, I had completely lost my appetite. I decided I needed to take a bath to calm down and recollect my thoughts. I made some tea, lit some candles, and filled the bathtub. I slowly got into the bath as the hot water touched my skin. It was quiet and peaceful. I finally had time to think. I closed my eyes and let my head rest against the back of the bathtub. What just happened? I'm definitely not seeing things. Those maggots were real. How in the world did my freshly boiled noodles turn into maggots? Didn't make sense. I whispered my thoughts out loud. When I opened my eyes to gaze at the relaxing setup I had put together, I jumped out of the water. My bath water was a deep shade of red now. Every candle I had lit went out. I quickly wrapped myself in the towel and turned on the main light. The candles weren't lit, but the bath water was clear. I didn't care. I wasn't going back in there. I dried myself off and put on some fresh clothes and went back into the bathroom to brush my teeth and hair before going to bed. I turned on the sink and grabbed my toothbrush. Right before I started brushing my teeth, I looked up into the mirror. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I was holding the toothbrush in my mouth, but my reflection wasn't. I watched my reflection sway back and forth. The closer I leaned in, the further my reflection would back up. It giggled as I watched my own reflection tear out my eyeballs. My reflection's eyes were dangling so low that they touched its mouth. It licked one of the eyeballs and one of the contacts flipped on its tongue. It started to chew it like it was food. Each chew sounded like broken pieces of plastic. I watched blood starting to form in my reflection's eyes. I couldn't take it anymore. I washed out my mouth and ran back into my bedroom. I sat down at my vanity and tried to take out my contacts without looking into the mirror. I thought that it would be easy to remove since it was so easy to put in. I was wrong. No matter what I did, they wouldn't budge. Not even a little bit. I tried pinching it, moving it, pushing, and sliding it. Nothing. After 30 minutes of nothing but severely irritating my eye, I gave up. I straightened my back from the bent over position and looked into the vanity mirror. My reflection was laughing at me. I covered all the mirrors in my house until I could figure out some way to get these things out of my eyes. They were a pretty natural color, so if I went out in public, no one would even notice that I had contacts stuck in my eyes. I was also skeptical to call a doctor at the time, considering I received the contacts from the dark web. I decided to try to rationalize things. I realized I sure didn't want to sleep with them in, so I'd have to stay awake as long as possible until I found a solution. I went into my living room to watch TV. It was the only place in my house where I couldn't see myself in some way. My house looked slightly abandoned, all the blankets draped over everything that could cause a reflection. I leaned forward to grab the remote that had fallen on the floor. Upon picking it up, I felt this sharp pain throughout my entire hand. I immediately dropped the remote and looked at my aching palm. Every inch of my hand was written in cuts. I watched blood drip from my hand onto the floor. I looked down to find the remote on the ground still. The buttons stuck out and came to a sharp point. They were sharper than a newly opened razor. I kicked the remote as hard as I could. I heard it crash against the wall and hit the floor. With my hands in my head, I heard the TV turn on. It was playing a show I couldn't recognize. I lifted my head and looked towards the television. It was me. I was on my own television. The quality was grainy, but I could make out what was happening. The television showed me walking across the street from our local grocery store. On my way across the road, a huge truck came at full speed. In the blink of an eye, the truck hit me, and I watched my lifeless body drag across the sidewalk. Then it turned back off. I didn't know what to do. I was scrambling around trying to figure something out. I ended up calling Jeremy. He seemed a bit concerned, but honestly, it didn't sound like he believed me. It's like he thought I was joking around. He ended up just hanging up on me, thinking I was pranking him. When I hung up my phone, I slammed it down on my hallway floor. I had been sitting there since the television situation. Tears filled my eyes and I heard my phone vibrate against the wooden floor. I picked up my phone and saw a text message from an unknown number. "Go outside," is all it read. I tried calling the number back. Of course, it didn't work, considering there was no number to begin with. The caller ID just said, unknown. At this point, I was trying everything. What more did I have to lose? I walked past my kitchen and glanced over at a bowl of fruit I kept on the counter. They were all black and rotten. I didn't stop though. I wanted to make it to my front door. I didn't plan on actually fully going outside, but a peek wouldn't hurt. At least that's what I thought. Before I could even put my hand on the doorknob, someone started knocking. "Package delivery." The voice was deep and foreign. I opened my door just a tad, and there stood a delivery man. His eyes were wide, really wide. They looked dry, like he hadn't blinked in hours. He had slash wounds across his entire face and down his neck. He was incredibly lanky and tall. He reached out his arm to hand me the package, and I realized he was missing 6 fingers. The wounds looked incredibly fresh. Blood soiled the entire box. "Just leave it, I'll get it," I said quickly. I slammed the door in his face and locked every single door in my house that led to the outside. Once I was sure he was gone, I quickly grabbed the package and pulled it into my house. Everything around me was slowly decaying, even the people outside. I eventually made my way back to my room. My stairs were littered with nails sticking directly upwards. I tried to avoid as many as I could, but I still stabbed the bottom of my feet multiple times. There were countless bloody holes in my feet. I left a crimson trail wherever I walked. I walked into the bathroom that was connected to the bedroom once more. I pulled off the cover and looked at myself again. This time, my reflection was still laughing, but pieces of my flesh dangled from different areas of my face. My neck was snapped and I had a noose around my neck. My tongue salivated black, looking tar. and my eyes were completely hollowed out. I hadn't slept in 3 days. I'm afraid to go to sleep. What if I wake up and my entire house is embedded in barbed wire? What if the floor is completely made of shards of glass? What if everything around me turns into the ultimate death trap? I'm absolutely terrified. I'm not taking any chances, especially since I brought the box inside. I ended up opening it. There's another box inside. This box was slightly cleaner, but had a message scratched along the top. It was barely legible, but it read, "Open it to find out when your untimely demise will fall upon you. Clock's ticking." Again, I figured I had nothing to lose, so I opened the second box. This time the box contained a handwritten note. "Not all eyes are meant to be a prize. The context you contain will show the other side. You can live with a vision, or you can choose your demise. I left you a gift. Now you can decide." I've been sitting here for hours now. All my food is infested and moldy. I need to go to the grocery store, but I keep looking at the gift that sat below the note. I never really thought this would ever be an appropriate gift for anyone, but I can't help but gaze at this already tied noose. I knew going on the dark web was a bad idea,